Good morning. Well, we're sailing into 2020, and our theme for the year this year is Cultivating 2020 Spiritual Vision. It's not the easiest thing to do, because spiritual vision is usually that which you have to intentionally focus your attention on because it is behind the appearances. It is the truth behind the appearances. And that's a challenge because I don't know about you, but appearances are very compelling for me. They get a hold of me right away. It's a really quick knee-jerk reaction to get a hold of the appearances. So cultivating spiritual vision means that we join together in intention to move our attention past the appearance. And we got a lot of appearances happening. You know, we have the fires in Australia. We have the earthquakes in Puerto Rico. We have the unrest that's happening in Iran and Iraq. So there's a lot of stuff out there to get tangled up in the appearances. Would you agree? Yes. So what would we look at and say is the spiritual truth behind that? Well, I'll tell you what. One of the things that gives rise to the appearance of conflict and danger and challenges is the sense of separation from each other and the sense of separation from the planet and from the infinite. And once we feel like we're separated, we begin to get scared. And when we begin to get scared, we begin to get angry or defensive or grief-stricken or I don't know what else. We go into paralysis, I guess. Fight, flight, and freeze, that's the other one, yeah, those three things. So when we get separated from the spiritual truth, and the challenge that Ernest Holmes talked about is if we keep persistently shifting our attention to what's true behind what is obviously happening, to the deeper truth behind that, then the deeper truth behind that comes forward into the foreground and begins to reveal itself. And we undermine that when we go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, because then we're putting equal amounts of opposing things into the creative law, and the only thing that it can do is just leave stuff as it is. So when we want to really make a change, the intention comes up that we need to really remind ourselves again and again to refocus that attention so we can go back to the truth. So our January theme is, let's start at the very beginning. And so last week we did. We started at the very beginning with the presence of God. What is God? And I'm going to do a little mini review in just a minute. But first I want to tell you a little story, because in the science of mind, we believe in that divine presence, but we don't believe that it's divided up. So we don't believe it's divided up into good and evil, regardless of apparent appearances or behaviors of different people or different situations. So that means that we don't believe in a separate devil, a separate being that is tempting people, because whose power would that use if God is omnipowerful, omnipotent? The only power that opposition could use is the power of God, which would make God a little schizophrenic, in my opinion. So the presence of God as all does not preclude the experience of hell. Now, here's the thing. Heaven and hell, in our philosophy, what we teach is that heaven and hell exist not as places that we go to after we're done living, but as states of consciousness we inhabit in our lives. Now, tell me the truth. How many of you have been in hell? Pretty much everybody. How many of you plan to go right straight back? Nobody wants. It's not a place to build a condo, So, this is an interesting exam. I don't know for sure that this is true, but it may be true. The story is this either came from a Yale professor or an associate professor of physics at MIT for thermodynamics. And this is the story. A thermodynamics professor had written a take-home exam for his graduate students, and it had only one question. Is hell exothermic, gives off heat, or endothermic, absorbs heat? Support your answer with a proof. Most of the students wrote proofs of their beliefs using Boyle's law. Gas cools off when it expands and heats up when it's compressed, or some variant of that. One student, however, wrote the following. First, we need to know how the mass of hell is changing in time. So we need to know the rate that souls are moving into hell and the rate that they're leaving. I think that we can safely assume that once a soul gets to hell, it will not leave. Therefore, no souls are leaving. As for how many souls are entering hell, let's look at the different religions that exist in the world today. Some of these religions state that if you are not a member of their religion, you will go to hell. And since there are more than one of these religions, and since most people do not belong to more than one religion, we can project that all people and all souls will go to hell. With birth and death rates as they are, we can expect the number of souls in hell to increase exponentially. Second, we look at the rate of change of the volume in hell, because Boyle's law states that in order for the temperature and pressure in hell to stay the same, the volume of hell has to expand as souls are added. This gives two possibilities. One, if hell is expanding at a slower rate than the rate at which souls enter hell, then the temperature and pressure in hell will increase until all hell breaks loose. Of course, if hell is expanding at a rate faster than the increase of souls in hell, then the temperature and pressure will drop until hell freezes over. So which is it? If we accept the postulate given to me by Miss Teresa Banyan during my freshman year that it will be a cold night in hell before I sleep with you, and take into account the fact that I have still not succeeded with her, then number 2 cannot be true, and so hell is exothermic. The student got the only A. We would just argue with the idea that no souls ever leave hell, because we know we've done it, right? So the topic that I chose for today, the title is The Secret Scoop on Creative Law. And so here we have Sherlock Holmes looking for clues on the secret scoop on creative law, and we have Mark and Gaelen Cooper's altar over here with clues. Now this looks like a clue game, right? We have the clock, we have the fingerprint, we have various weapons, we have the lip prints on the coffee cup, and we have the map, mapping it all out. But if we look at this also from the perspective of creative law and appearances and truth, then we have that the creative law is not limited by time, not limited by space, not limited by form, the fingerprint, our individual expression. It isn't limited by our history or by our genetics. And then we have the weapons, the lead pipe, the wrench, the knife, the rope. The only thing we're missing is the revolver and the candlestick over here. These are all appearances. They are appearances of problems or challenges or threats or dangers. And what we want to do is use the map to decide where we want to go and then use the law to go there. I figured that out because I wanted to figure out a way to take the clues and put them into the talk. So that's what I came up with, okay? So this is, oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So this is looking at the process of the creative law this morning. So first, last week, I said, basically, God is all there is. There's no God and Dorothy. There's just God. God showing up as everything, everyone. The presence overflowing into expression. So that each one of us is just the vibration of God slowed down enough to become visible in a particular expression, a particular form. And it's infinitely appearing in its variety. So it is everywhere, always. It is eternal and it's unlimited. This infinite, whatever it is, it also contains all possibilities that have happened, that might happen, that probably won't happen but could. And it is an absolutely indivisible oneness and unity, which means that no matter what it looks like, no matter who we seem to be in conflict with, that underneath we are one. We are connected. And in the spiritual truth, we do not have opposing needs, or views because we're one. And since that's true, it must mean that that infinite mind knows how to reveal that oneness in spite of apparent differences. And further, to reveal it to me, so the mind of God that's within me already knows, and also I'm not so much of a mystery and so difficult for the presence of that which created the universe that it can't make it known to me in a way that I can actually get. In a way that I can actually feel drawn and compelled to respond to. You with me so far? Are you sure? Okay, that sounded a little tenuous, so we'll go on, all right? So all of this that God, this infinite presence, this infinite consciousness is mostly all true of the creative law as well, because they're not separate things. We just talk about them separately in order to talk about creation. So when we look at creative law, well, let me go back just a second here. I want to say this. This is what Ernest Holmes said about religious science, which is our philosophy, our teaching. He said, religious science is based on a few, very few, simple and fundamental ideas. The basic proposition is that the universe in which we live is a combination of love and law, or divine presence and universal principle. We may call it a spontaneous self-emergence and a mechanical reaction, or the word and the law, or the personal and the impersonal, or the thing and the way it works. So I said last week that when we talk about the January series about the basic principles of science of mind, we start with the first 4 chapters in the Science of Mind textbook, kind of as our introduction. And they're called this: the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. The thing itself, that's the mystery, the God presence, the whatever that is. The way it works is the creative law. The way it creates is the creative law. And so creative law operates through the process of belief, thought, feeling, and that combination. So it is impersonal and impartial, the creative law. It has no favorites. It doesn't leave anybody out. It has no judgment about anything. It is consistent. You can count on it to do what it does. And it's never at rest. It's always on. It never turns off. It is automatic. And it has no self-awareness. It is a principle, like gravity or something else. That's the only principle I can think of in the moment. But there's a whole bunch of them. You math people know. And also, it needs to work from a blueprint in order to manifest something. It's not a self-starter. It doesn't do that. It has to have a blueprint to act upon in order to create. And so this creative law, interestingly, Albert Einstein said this. So I'm not sure I agree with him, the premise that he starts off with, but I love what he says here. He says, everyone who is seriously involved with the pursuit of science becomes convinced, that's what I'm not sure of. Everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man, and one in the face of which we with our modest powers must feel humble. Now, I'm not sure all scientists would agree with him about that, but I like that thought. Hafiz says in The Gift, the book The Gift, what a skilled man can do with a hammer, the advanced pilgrim can do with thought. One builds their own seat in this world. Oh, not one that way. One builds their own seat in this world using God, the only material that is everywhere. And our founder, Ernest Holmes, says this: we must accustom ourselves to the concept of the impersonalness of the law, the availability of the law, and the mechanical accuracy of the law. Universal principles are never respecters of persons. The universe has no favorites. Therefore it is written, and let him that is athirst come, and whoever will, let him take the water of life freely. That's a quote from the book of Revelation. And he also said, we are thinking, willing, knowing, conscious centers of life. We are surrounded by, immersed in, and there is flowing through us a creative something. Call it what you will. The sum total of all our thought, will, purpose, and belief creates a tendency in this law that causes it to react to us according to the sum total of that belief. And that's how it creates. It uses us to create. Now, Ernest Holmes said, there is a power for good in the world greater than you are, and you can use it. That's true. We learn to think and practice it in a way that allows us to use the law. But actually what we're doing is really cooperating with it. I mean, are you using gravity right now? Or is it using you? You know, do you use electricity? Or are you cooperating with electricity? So the creative law does what it does. We can't change that. We can't make it stop. We can't interrupt it. But what we can do is give it something to act on. And then it will produce that, because it's got to produce, and it does it constantly, and that's all it does. So it's always operating on consciousness, constantly. What we believe we are is what we experience our lives to be in the world. What we put our belief and our feeling into repeatedly becomes our life. We do that individually, but we also do it collectively. We do it in families. We do it in neighborhoods. We do it in races, like racial divisions. We do it in countries. We do it in states. We do it in continents. We do it as a globe. We tend to think within our tribe, unless we're introduced to something that allows us to step beyond the tribe or beyond our comfort zone. So is this making sense, what I'm saying? Okay. So when we do this individually, we manifest the life that is ours personally. But as we do this collectively, which is mostly unconscious, we produce the life that is ours, yours and mine. So I overlap with you, you overlap with me, we overlap with everybody that is. And I'm not altogether sure that trees and dolphins and grass don't also have consciousness that we overlap with. Thank God for the trees. I have opinions about their consciousness, but I won't go there. So it's operating on this consciously, and our lives are the result. But because there's also a certain amount of unconscious creation going on, beliefs that aren't questioned or tested, or beliefs that we don't actively work to neutralize within ourselves, they float through the consciousness that we all share, and they stick. That's not really a metaphysical term, but I'm using it this morning. They stick to those of us whose vibrations kind of match that, even if we're not conscious that we're adopting a particular attitude or belief. And so even if we don't consciously adopt it, it operates through the creative law and shows up in our lives as if it was ours, as if we did intentionally, consciously take it on. Okay? So I'll give you an example. And this, this is a questionable example. In my family, all of my brothers and I are nearsighted. Our father was nearsighted. Our father died at age 50. We have all outlived him by decades at least. And all of us are nearsighted. I was very close to my dad. Of the 5 of us, I'm the most nearsighted, or I was until I had laser surgery. Now, was I nearsighted because that family connection had a way of looking at the world or problems or ourselves or each other that kept us very focused up close? And because I was close to my dad, I pulled that in the most of anybody. Or is it all just genetics? Or does that attitude affect which genes of mine get flipped on and off so that I manifest nearsightedness when I wouldn't necessarily have to? But I don't consciously do that. Are you with me here? So that's that's my thought about it. I don't know the answer to that, but that's my thought about it, that possibly it's more than just genetics. So Father Sean O'Lear, who is this rebel Jesuit priest that I know kind of peripherally and adore, he said our expectations and perceptions determine what we allow the world to say to us, what we allow God to say to us, and how we respond to it. Let me say that again. Our expectations and perceptions, what we assume to be true because of what comes in through our senses or our intuition, our expectations and our perceptions determine what we allow the world to say to us, what we allow God to say to us, and how we respond to it. Because we assume that we have the majority of the information that we need to make a decision about how somebody is or how a situation is. And yet, if we look at our five senses, what we discover is there's a lot of information available that our brains and our senses are not prepared to receive or process. There are things we're not capable of hearing, certain vibrations. There are wavelengths we're not capable of seeing. There are sounds and vibrations and I'm sure levels of feeling. Certainly, I have nothing remotely as acute as the sense of smell my dog had. Thank God. But on the other hand, I know that some of what she smelled did not smell to her like it smelled to me, or she wouldn't have eaten things that she did. So there's more information available that we don't take in because it is not necessary for us in our particular lives to take those vibrations in and process them. But for some other animals, creatures, it is. Unfortunately, though, our brain does something else as well. That is that it saves us time and energy by filtering out stuff that we could perceive, but that we don't think of as important. And so it filters it out as if it isn't even there. We don't see it. We don't hear it. The lady who comes to clean the house for us started cleaning the bathtub at one point because there was some, I don't know if it was years of dirty feet or what, but we had some sticky stuff that had been kind of sticky stuff, on the surface of the tub when it was put in, but the tub's been there long enough, it's not that way anymore because it's collected enough skin cells or whatever, and it was looking a little bit a different color than the bathtub, not completely clean. So she had started cleaning it, but it was a lot of work. And it was about half clean. And Amanda said to me yesterday, did you notice I finished cleaning the bathtub? Had not noticed it at all. And in fact, this morning, she said to me when I got out of the shower, did you notice the bathtub? And then I had to turn around and look. This was a change in my environment. Didn't notice it at all, not at all. Why? Because the surface of the bathtub apparently wasn't important to me. Or I didn't feel I needed the information. Or I was distracted with other things. So there's stuff happening around us all the time that our brains are just filtering out. What part of what is are we missing? So that doesn't mean we shouldn't make decisions. We have to. But it means sometimes that it's worthwhile to question our beliefs or our attitudes about people and situations and things sometimes. Would you agree? Alan Cohen wrote in his book, Rising in Love, the subconscious is a powerful but unbiased computer that perfectly and literally carries out any program we feed into it, even if the program is incorrect. It will perform our every bidding, even if we are unaware that the instructions it has received are not in our best interest. This harsh but dynamic truth brings us to a crucial point. Because we human beings have free will and machines do not, it is our responsibility to screen and critically evaluate the programs we embed in our creative mind, or else we bear the brunt of faulty programming. And so, because this is how the creative law works, I want to share a couple of specific examples with you. The first one is the example of a hologram. A hologram is, to me, an amazing miracle. Here's how a hologram is created. You take a laser beam and you split it in two. The first part of the laser beam then goes directly to the holographic film. And the second part of the beam bounces off an object, whatever you want to make the hologram out of. So it envelops the object, and then it bounces onto that holographic film. And the result of it doesn't look anything like a picture. Like you look through a negative and you see the picture, a little version of the picture you took. This doesn't look like anything. It just looks like an interference pattern of waves. But when you take a different laser and you shine it through that piece of film, out in space in front of you is the whole three-dimensional object. You can see it there. You can walk around it. You can look at the back of it, the front of it, the side of it. And the most mind-blowing thing about this process of a hologram to me is, if you cut that film up into little tiny pieces and you shine a laser light through any one of them, the entire three-dimensional object will show up. So not only is that three-dimensional object encoded on that piece of holographic film, the entirety of it is encoded everywhere. Now that is a model of God to me. And it always works that way. It always works that way. It doesn't change the rules. If you do that, you'll get the thing. Now let me give you a much simpler example. And it doesn't matter how fancy your toaster is or how many pieces of toast bread it will toast, it doesn't matter. This is what a toaster is like. A toaster, this infinite toaster, the creative law, we first must assume and imagine that it is always plugged in and it always has power. Okay, that's a creative law. Secondly, we must recognize that it does not know that it's a toaster. It has no self-awareness, no personal identity, nothing. Third, anyone can use it. Doesn't matter how educated you are, doesn't matter how good you are. If you know how the toaster works, you can use it. This is creative law. And finally, it cannot work on its own. The toaster will not suddenly throw anything into itself and toast. It won't do that. It will never do that, nor will it take anything you put in the toaster and spit it out. It won't do that. It will toast whatever you put in it. So, if you put in a wad of peanut butter, it will try and toast that. If you put in a car key, it will try and toast that. If you put in an old sock, it will try and toast that. Never mind, it will stink up your whole house. The toaster doesn't care. It has no opinion. It just toasts. That's what it does. And it toasts whatever comes its way. This is creative law. It's always on. It's always working. It doesn't know that it exists, and it has no opinion about anything. Anyone can use it. It doesn't matter who they are. If they know how to use it, they can use it, which basically means cooperating with it. And it will not do anything to your life that it didn't get put in from you. It doesn't randomly grab stuff. It can't say, oh, I'm going to improve that relationship with your Aunt Edna, because that would be really good for both of you. It can't do that. But it's always there. It's always working. It's always doing what it needs to do. And the differences we get in our lives depend on the settings and depend on what it is that was toasted. So the toaster is doing the same thing always for everybody. But the results we get are different depending on our internal settings. Those are our feelings about something, our beliefs about something, and what is toasted. So it's that plus repetition. So if we take our deeply held beliefs and we apply feeling, and we persist in repeating that, we will get the result that matches it. So if we're looking at a world of chaos and confusion and upset and all of that, we're looking at disharmony and disorder and pain, then if we look at that over and over and over and over again and think it's terrible, it's awful, it's terrible, it's awful, it feels terrible, it makes me mad, I hate these people, I hate this situation, I don't want to see this happen again, and we repeat that over and over and over and over again, what do you suppose the result would be? Not roses, not harmony. So instead, when we look at that situation, we say, okay, what's the opposite of how this is showing up? What's the way it should look, the way it would look if it were in harmony, if it were truly one? What would that look like? How would I feel about that? And we get into the feeling of that. We adopt it as our vibration. We take it on and we settle into it and we get all yummy in there. And we take time every single day, over and over again, to go to that place, to go to that place, to go to that place, as a neutralizer for this other thing, but also as to build it up inside ourselves. Then what do you suppose we get? It's different. And it may be different in several ways. It may actually change the external world of our experience. That's one way. Another way is it may change our internal way of looking at that or interpreting it, that completely changes our experience of it, although it's no different because perhaps the problem was actually in here, not out there, or both. So the possibility of the way that it unfolds and reveals itself is not necessarily what we're attached to. Like, I'm going to do this work of seeing myself in total harmony with my Aunt Edna. I'm going to feel what that would feel like and how I would feel and what I would think of her and what I would say about her, and I'm going to do that over and over again. Maybe Aunt Edna never changes, but she doesn't bother me anymore. I feel totally okay with her. She doesn't hurt me, she doesn't insult me, I'm not shocked by what she does, I have no judgment on her, I'm at peace. That's an equal demonstration. Does this make sense? Or both may change. I may change internally, and Aunt Edna may change. I want to share a little story with you about how we see. This comes from a book called How the Children Became Stars. And this story is called Lord Krishna and the Two Men, as it is retold by Aaron Zera. It is told in India that Lord Krishna wished to see if the kings of his land were wise. So he first called a king named Duryodhana. Duryodhana was known as a cruel man, and the people in his kingdom feared him. Lord Krishna told Duryodhana that he was to take a journey throughout the lands. I want you, Lord Krishna said, to look for one truly good person for me. And Duryodhana obeyed Lord Krishna and began his travels. He found many different kinds of people and spoke to them about many things. After a long time away, Duryodhana returned to Lord Krishna, and he said, Lord, I have done what you commanded me, and looked the whole world over for one truly good soul. Such a person I could not find. Each one I met was evil and selfish-minded. A truly good person cannot be found anywhere. Lord Krishna sent Duryodhana on his way and called King Dhamaraja to see him. Dhamaraja was known as a kind man who tried to help his people in his kingdom, who loved him very much. Lord Krishna said to King Dhamaraja, I want you to journey throughout all the lands and find me one truly evil person. Dhamaraja said, as you wish, my lord. And like Duryodhana, he set off on a long journey. After much time had passed, Dhamaraja came back to Lord Krishna and said, my lord, I have not brought back the one truly evil person you wish to see. I found that people make mistakes. I found that they are fooled by others. I found that they act as if they are blind. But I could not find a truly evil person. The people are all good in their hearts. Who was seeing accurately? what we see is a reflection of what we cultivate ourselves to be, the good and the bad. And by cultivate ourselves to be, what I mean is what we repeat over and over again to ourselves. And so as we look at the creative law, let us, instead of seeing it as a challenge or a problem or something that produces results for us that we'd rather not have, let's instead see if we can look at the creative law as a loyal friend that is there to support us, to create a world that works for everyone, a world living in harmony, a world in which the problems and challenges that arise are met with love and with the vastness of all possibilities. I invite you to include that in your cultivating of 2020 spiritual vision for this year. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to take a moment now to just anchor that. I invite you to close your eyes. And in this moment, I want you to take one of your index fingers and just rest it on your third eye. That's the space between your eyebrows on your forehead. Just rest your index finger there for a moment. As we know and remember that there's only one, and it's right here under your finger. And all of it is right there. It's all encoded right here, 100% of it. We do not need to know everything, but what we need to know is known right where we are. We do not need to be everything or do everything, but what we need to be and do is known right here, right where we are. Now I'm going to invite you to take your other index finger and to tap your chest where your heart is, roughly. Here and here. This is all. Feel your feet on the floor. Be aware of your breathing. And honor yourself in this moment as the embodiment of the infinite presence. And know that all of that infinite presence that you are is also sitting on either side of you and is this very room. We are grateful to remember who we are. And so we let this word go, that it might manifest more fully in our awareness and our experience. And so it is.